Welcome to the Ask the Herbalist podcast with Lily Cunning. That's me, your host. Ask the Herbalist is brought to you by Haven Herbs, which is available to anyone, anywhere at havenherbs.com. Hi, welcome back to Ask the Herbalist. Today we have two questions from our Ask the Herbalist subreddit, which if you want to find it on Reddit, it's literally Ask the Herbalist. We'd love to have you join, ask questions, chime in. It's a fun place. So let's get started. The first question is about tea, or as herbalists call herbal blends, tisanes. I know a lot of people in the US call it herbal tea. And that's fine, but tea actually technically refers to a plant, Camellia sinensis, which is black, green, and white tea, along with twig tea, known as kokicha in Japan. And it is a very specific plant. It's why people think that you only brew herbs for a few minutes, because if you brew Camellia sinensis for longer than 3, it gets pretty bitter and less fun to drink. But herbal tisanes or herbal teas are a little different. And so we got a question today, actually 3 questions in the same question. So number 1, our asker wants to know, tea bags or loose leaf, which is better, or does it not matter? 2, I see tea in grocery stores claiming to solve different health problems. Tea for headaches, tea for stomach issues, tea for muscle pain, tea to cleanse the body of toxins. I could keep going, but you get the idea. Do these teas really cure these problems? I'd rather drink tea than take an Advil or Tylenol or antacid. 3, and if the health teas work, how often do you have to drink a cup before you see results? So this is a very big set of questions. And, several people chimed in before I got a chance to. The internet is amazing with people just Johnny on the spot there. But here is my response. Loose tea is always superior to bagged tea. For a couple reasons. The main reason is the size of the pieces. So when you chop up tea so that it can fit into those bags, or you powder, your herbs in order to fit into a capsule, you are chopping up the cell walls, which contain the phytochemicals, which are the flavor and the medicine. When you do that, it starts to oxidize and lose potency immediately, right? And the problem is, of course, that you don't know how long ago those pieces were chopped up. And if you are buying bagged tea in those little boxes at the supermarket, chances are the brew that you're selecting is at least a year old, possibly older, before it even makes it onto that shelf. So you're talking about things that were chopped up and then sat around for a year before you're hoping that it will cure your headache or your tummy ache or whatever it is. So loose tea is always better because the pieces, while they are chopped, they're much bigger and have more vitality and more intact cell walls in them. And so I always recommend to people who are getting into herbalism to invest in some equipment. That equipment could be a French press or an infuser teapot meant for loose tea. They also make infuser cups, single cups with a lid. You can also, just buy the little infuser spoons or balls. Those are fantastic, and they last years, if not lifetimes, depending on the quality of what you buy. And it's also just more sustainable, right? Less trash going out. You can use the infusers and then put the loose grounds either in your compost or feed it to livestock. You got to close that loop, right? So loose tea is always superior. And the claims, as far as the claims go for these teas that are in the supermarket, they may or may not be true. It really depends on a lot of factors. Number 1, what ingredients are they using? Number 2, the claim that they've made about those ingredients. Were they formulated by an herbalist or were they formulated by Coca-Cola, right? So, you really want to look at what's in the tea, and what you know about the herbs in the ingredient list, right? It also depends on how fresh and potent those ingredients are, right? Um, it could be that tummy tea with marshmallow root would normally help out a lot. But number one, it's really old marshmallow root. And number two, they told you to brew it like a hot tea, and all the mucilage from that would be beneficial to your tummy from that marshmallow root gets destroyed with hot water, and you should have done a cold infusion. That's the problem with mass market things, right? It also depends on why you need the tea. So I'm going to use the example of headache tea because you mentioned headache tea. So headaches are a symptom, right? What is the root cause of your headache? Do you know? If you have a headache that stems from inflammation, meadowsweet or willow bark, which were mentioned in the thread down below by people or by myself in response, could help, right? Because those are herbal anti-inflammatories. But if your headache is from sinus congestion or it's from misalignment of the spine, that herb may or may not help you, right? Um, so there's two different ways herbalists formulate, and I do both. When I formulate for a client, meaning someone that I did an intake visit with, they filled out a form, I asked lots of questions. I create a custom formula just for them because herbalism works best when the herbalist is a matchmaker. They look at the human that has imbalances and they look at the plants that are going to help restore balance. And it is very individual. You can recommend 10 different plants for the same condition. And the reason I believe that there are so many is that there are different people with different constitutions. And so not just the phytochemicals and their actions in the body, but also their energetics really help match a plant with a animal, right? This is what we're doing. We're playing matchmaker between the plant and animal kingdoms. So, you know, it really depends. I know that that is kind of a catch-all answer sometimes, but it is true. Um, and so I would rather also drink a tea than pop an NSAID. But, I need to know that the reason I would take an NSAID or take that tea are the reasons that those plants would address, if that makes sense. So also, you asked how long it would take to start seeing results if they do work. And yes, herbs work, right? Up until 1986, the vast majority of pharma was extracted from plants and then compounded phytochemicals. It wasn't until we were able to synthesize those chemicals cheaper that pharma became synthetic based. And it wasn't because synthesized chemicals were more efficient or practical. It was because they were cheaper. It meant higher profit margins for the industry. So, for folks that say plants can't help people, that is absolutely untrue. But so, you know, if you are looking to figure out how much to take when you're first starting to take a tea for a specific condition, I have like a general guideline, right? Number one, if there are ingredients in the tea that you've never ingested, start small and test for allergies first, right? It's not going to help you if you have, anaphylactic shock. So make an 8-ounce cup of tea on its own, follow the package instructions. Take a few swallows, wait 10 minutes, and if no reaction, drink the rest of the tea. Now, after you've drank the tea and you've waited, 10, 15 more minutes, assess your body's response to that tea. Did it help you? Then that is the appropriate dose for you. No? Well, now you can either take more or change how you prepare the tea. There are multiple ways to prepare herbal medicine using water as a solvent. So the first one, and the one that is most familiar to people, is called a hot infusion. Now, this is the most familiar way people have to make hot tea, right? So they pour boiling water over some plant material, whether that's Camellia sinensis or other kinds of herbs, and you let it steep. Now, here's where people don't necessarily know best practices when it comes to herbal medicine. Number one, you have to cover that cup. You can do it with a saucer. It doesn't have to be a special cup with special equipment or anything. But steam takes with it vital phytochemicals that you want in your medicine. So while you're steeping, you cover it, and you're going to steep an herbal medicinal infusion a lot longer than you would steep Camellia sinensis. I mentioned earlier that most people brew no longer than 3 minutes. Otherwise, it gets bitter. Well, that's because Camellia sinensis is mostly consumed for flavor, right? We're talking ingesting medicine, and so you're going to steep it longer, 15 to 20 minutes, covered, and then take it. The other ways to prepare herbs in a herbal tea is a cold infusion, which most people know is like making a sun tea, where you put a bag of herbs in a big jar or pitcher, and you put room temperature water in there, and you let it steep, possibly in the sun, possibly overnight. The trick here is that you need to remove those herbs after it's steeped, so that there's no plant material in there, and you can store it in the fridge for like 5 days or so. And this is great when you need to take a brew on the regular. Let's say it's the start of allergy season, you've made an allergy hay fever symptom tea, and you need to get it in your system so that your body stops that histamine response, right? One dose isn't necessarily going to do it, or do it for a long time. And we see the same with pharmaceuticals, right? You have to keep taking it. So making a cold infusion allows you to drink your medicine, a glass in the morning and a glass at night, for example. But if you need more potency than an infusion can give you, you can also make what's called a decoction. And this is where you take the herbs, you put them in a pot with water, you bring it to a boil and cover it, and then you simmer it for 20 minutes. This is a lot more intense in flavor and potency with phytochemicals than an infusion. And consuming that will give you more medicine, more potent medicine. It may taste really intense, and you may need to dilute it, or you may need to mask it with honey, whatever you need to do. But those are different ways that you can make that medicine and get more out of it. I hope this answered your question. I'm happy to answer more tea questions. Tea is one of the most familiar and comforting ways people can start in herbalism, and so it tends to be a place where people are more comfortable. And I'm really happy that you're interested in starting your herbal journey through tea. Welcome to the Ask the Herbalist intermission. It's our intention that we answer 2 questions per episode, with this intermission in the middle letting you know about our sponsor, Haven Herbs. Haven Herbs is a small batch herbal apothecary that is high quality, family owned, and has over 100 products in body care, remedies, and tonics that have all been requested by our customers. If you search our catalog and don't find exactly what you're looking for, please send us an email, because again, all of our products have their origin by customer request. We also have a dedication to education, hence this podcast, but also we teach free classes for cancer support community. We have a blog full of tips and education and a YouTube channel. And we have online classes available for purchase on the website as well. If you have questions for this podcast, there's a couple ways to do it. You can email me, Lily, Lily, at havenherbs.com, or you can visit our subreddit, which is called Ask the Herbalist. Ask the Herbalist questions on our subreddit will be answered on Reddit, but also may make their way to the podcast. You can listen to this podcast anywhere you happen to stream your podcasts, on YouTube, and they are archived on my Substack, which I will link to in the description. Now, back to our programming. So our next question on Reddit was very short, and to my mind, alarmingly short. They said, herbs to replace SSRI. I've been on them for almost a decade for my anxiety and depression. Bonus points if it's lactation friendly. So uh, we had several people chime in about going to the doctor. Yes, please. You need case management when you're getting off SSRIs. They are no joke. You can have some serious side effects as you are weaning off of those kinds of drugs, including suicidal ideation. And your question indicates that you have a little one. So please work with a practitioner to wean yourself off of SSRI. There are lots of people out there that can help you do that, in addition to a medical doctor. And I recommended going to the American Herbalist Guild and finding a practitioner near them. With such a complicated case, and it is complicated, it's not simple. We can't just drop in an herb to replace SSRIs. Please don't do that. I care about you and I want you to make sure that you're well. Um, So herbalism doesn't work that way, and you're going to need case management and probably a custom formula with several different things. And that formula is going to vary based on answers that your herbalist gets from you in the intake. Um, the American Herbalist Guild is a guild of clinical practitioners who have earned that RH after their name. And if you go to their website and look for find a registered herbalist, you can look in your area. Now, if there's no one in your area, then I highly recommend either doing an online appointment or seeing a naturopath in your area. You can Google naturopath. Um, and your zip code, but you really want someone to do case management with you. Um, I I can't stress enough that herbalism does not work like pharma. And frankly, I don't think pharma works like pharma. We have been trained that diagnosis equals prescription equals cure, and that's not how medicine works, in my opinion. I'm a holistic practitioner, and while pharmaceuticals can do a fantastic job with intense situations and symptom management, that doesn't necessarily get rid of the underlying cause. And with SSRIs in particular, they're learning that they don't even cure specifically depression, that's not how depression is manifesting in the body. And so serotonin reuptake is not really part of the equation. That's the most recent research. Um, so you want someone familiar with anxiety and depression. You want someone familiar with pharmaceuticals, and you want someone to check in with because the side effects of weaning can be pretty intense. So, but again, herbs do not work like I'm looking to replace this. What can I drop in this slot to replace this thing? That's not how it works. I said it in the earlier in this podcast that uh, herbalists are matchmakers, and we look at you as a person and your constitution and your symptom manifestation and your condition, and we look at the plants and their actions in the body and their energetics, and we play matchmaker. So there's no one answer that I can give you. There are plenty of herbs on the internet that you will find that say, oh, don't take that while you're taking SSRIs because it does the same thing and you don't want to like go too far, or, it'll interfere with your prescription. And the reason that it interferes is it does the same thing. But that may not be the right plant solution for you. And so check out the American Herbalist Guild or check out a naturopath in your area, and I wish you well. All right, we've come to the end of the podcast, and of course, now we need the necessary disclaimers. If you get 10 herbalists in a room, you're going to get 10 different opinions on something. We are a cantankerous lot, so your mileage may vary. The opinions that are expressed here on the podcast are the opinions of the herbalists appearing, including your host, Lily Cunning, and our sponsor, Haven Herbs. Also, some necessary legalese. Lily and Haven and anyone else appearing on this podcast are not your licensed medical provider and therefore can't legally offer advice or products to diagnose, treat, or cure any illness. The content on the podcast is not intended to substitute for advice given by a physician, a pharmacist, or any other licensed healthcare professional. You shouldn't use this information as self-diagnosis or treating a health problem or disease. Information and statements on the podcast regarding dietary supplements have not been evaluated by Health Canada nor the FDA of the United States and are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease or health condition. And of course, see a practitioner of your choosing if your condition persists or worsens. Got it? Great.